Empire. A history of cold calculation. A Game of Thrones. Welcome back, truth seekers. This is your host, digging into the raw machinery of history. Today, we're going to shatter the comfortable myths about empire and expose what these systems truly were. Ruthless extraction machines operating with surgical precision across millennia. Look, when I teach my students about world history, the first thing I tell them is, forget everything you learned in high school. Those textbooks sanitize the brutal reality. Empires weren't about spreading civilization or cultural enlightenment. They were calculating systems designed for one purpose: maximum resource extraction with minimum resistance. The birth of empire, 3000 to 1000 BCE. Let's start with the inception around 3000 BCE. What's actually happening in Mesopotamia and Egypt? You've got these independent city-states, each with their own economic systems, cultural practices, leadership structures, and suddenly they're being violently absorbed into centralized control. The Akkadian Empire wasn't just the first empire, it was the first perfected resource extraction machine. Look at the cold precision of what they implemented. Standardized administrative codes to control local governance, regulated labor to maximize production output, seized control of trade routes to funnel wealth to the center. This wasn't about bringing order to chaos, it was mathematical. How do we extract maximum surplus with minimum investment? These early imperial rulers, they weren't building infrastructure for public welfare. Every road, every canal, every standardized weight and measure served two functions: rapid military deployment and efficient resource flow. Think about it. Why standardize weights and measures? To make tax collection predictable and efficient. Every single decision optimized for revenue collection and resistance suppression. This is computational thinking applied to human societies. Classical expansion, 1000 BCE to 500 CE, moving to the classical period. The Persians, Greeks, Romans. We see the same operational logic, but at a larger scale. What were they actually doing? Operating with a singular objective: accumulate power through territorial expansion and resource absorption. The Persian Empire's satrapy system, brilliant in its efficiency. Each conquered territory assessed purely for its resource potential and strategic value. Every conquest underwent cost-benefit analysis. Will controlling this territory generate surplus after factoring in occupation costs? If yes, conquer. If no, bypass. The Romans. They perfected this game. Their entire military administrative apparatus was an economic engine dressed in cultural clothing. Those famous Roman roads? Military logistics infrastructure that happened to facilitate tax collection. Those aqueducts and forums? Administrative control centers. Their goal wasn't to Romanize conquered peoples for cultural reasons, but to integrate them into standardized economic units that could be efficiently managed and taxed. Every annexation decision went through rigorous calculation. Will this territory provide surplus resources? Will it facilitate further expansion? Does it contain strategic materials? What's the cost of suppressing resistance versus potential revenue? Then came systematic suppression, followed by administrative integration. This is corporate acquisition and restructuring, just with swords and shields instead of lawyers and consultants. Medieval reconfigurations, 500 to 1500 CE. When Rome collapsed, the imperial game didn't end. It fragmented and reconfigured. The Byzantine Empire maintained those Roman administrative systems, not out of tradition, but because they remained effective at resource extraction and rival containment. The Islamic Caliphate's expansion, analyze what they actually did beyond the religious narrative. Their lightning campaigns methodically targeted wealthy regions, trade hubs, and strategic choke points. Their administrative systems minimized occupation costs while maximizing wealth flow to imperial centers. The speed of their conquest wasn't just military brilliance, it was operational efficiency. And then the Mongols. They executed perhaps history's most brutally efficient imperial system. Their approach was algorithmic. Apply overwhelming force to eliminate central resistance. Establish secure trade networks. implement standardized administration, extract resources at sustainable rates. They created history's largest contiguous land empire, not through superior numbers, but through superior operational methodology. The Pax Mongolica wasn't peace for peace's sake. It was the optimal condition for resource extraction and wealth accumulation. Global maritime expansion, 1500 to 1800 CE. Around 1500, technological innovation fundamentally changed the imperial calculation. Naval technology meant conquest was no longer constrained by territorial continuity. European powers could project force anywhere globally, and they did it with ruthless economic logic. The Spanish and Portuguese colonial ventures weren't adventures. They were calculated investments, develop naval technology, establish strategic footholds, monopolize valuable trade goods, extract precious metals and resources. The return on investment calculations would make modern venture capitalists blush. The British, French, and Dutch refined this system. Their colonial outposts served dual functions: resource extraction points and military positions to defend those extraction operations against competitors. Their governance structures were engineered for maximum efficiency, minimal administrative overhead with maximum wealth flow to the metropole. Mercantilist policies weren't ideological positions, but mathematical imperatives: ensure wealth flows in one direction only. The result? Entire continents' economies completely rewired to serve European industrial and commercial interests. Local production, consumption patterns, and trade networks subordinated to imperial requirements. This wasn't just theft. It was comprehensive economic restructuring at a global scale. Industrial Empire, 1800 to 1945 CE. The Industrial Revolution didn't change the game. It accelerated and intensified it. Industrial technology created new metrics of imperial power and new extraction possibilities. Railways, telegraphs, steam power. These weren't just technologies, but imperial force multipliers. Colonial territories were recategorized as components in an industrial supply chain. European powers, particularly Britain, France, and Germany, intensified their control by reorganizing colonial economies to feed industrial production in the metropole. The calculus was explicit: secure raw materials, capture markets for manufactured goods, maintain sufficient military presence to deter competitors. The entire global economy was being rewired to serve the industrial core's needs. The world wars, these weren't just conflicts, but the ultimate stress test of imperial systems. Military strategy and economic strategy became indistinguishable. The mobilization of entire national economies for total war was the culmination of centuries of imperial operational thinking. The outcome wasn't measured in ideological victories, but in the brutal arithmetic of production capacity, resource control, and strategic position. Post-war transformation, 1945 to 2020 CE. After 1945, the imperial game evolved again. The United States and Soviet Union recognized that direct territorial control had become inefficient, too costly to maintain against nationalist resistance. They shifted to influence rather than occupation. The Cold War was a masterclass in proxy management and strategic positioning. Both superpowers deployed influence precisely where resource control was at stake. The operational logic remained unchanged: maximize strategic advantage while minimizing direct engagement costs. Alliances, economic dependencies, and covert interventions replaced garrisons and colonial administrators. Decolonization itself was a strategic realignment. Former colonial powers calculated that direct rule had become a liability. Maintaining it cost more than the extraction value. The solution? Grant nominal independence while maintaining economic integration. The cost-benefit analysis had shifted, but the objective remained constant: ensure continued resource flow while reducing administrative overhead. By the early 21st century, traditional empire building had evolved into sophisticated networks of economic interdependence, technological control, and military partnerships. The imperial priorities shifted to controlling information flows, securing energy supplies, and maintaining technological superiority. The mechanisms changed, but the objective remained: consolidate power through systematic control of resources and strategic capabilities. The calculus of empire. Throughout history, empires operated according to consistent priorities that transcend time and technology. Resource extraction. Every conquest, every administrative reform, every infrastructure project optimized to maximize wealth, inflow, whether raw materials, labor, or strategic assets. Military efficiency, superior technology and logistics as the foundation of control. The ability to project decisive force rapidly and suppress resistance at acceptable cost. Administrative integration, standardized governance systems designed to eliminate inefficiencies and ensure predictable contributions to the central treasury. Strategic adaptation. As technology and geopolitics evolved, so did control methods, from direct territorial annexation to complex networks of economic and military influence. Every empire from Sargon of Akkad to the present operated under one immutable principle: transform territory and populations into quantifiable, extractable assets. Each decision, whether building Roman roads or establishing digital surveillance systems, calculated to shift power and wealth to the decision-makers. In conclusion, from ancient Mesopotamia to today's global economic order, what we call world history is actually a continuous series of strategic moves in a resource competition game. The success metrics never changed. Expansion. How effectively can new territories be annexed and controlled? Administration. How efficiently can predictable revenue streams be established? Integration. How thoroughly can economic and military systems be subordinated to imperial interests? Adaptation. How quickly can strategy adapt to technological and geopolitical shifts? When we strip away the mythology and justifications, the history of empires reveals itself as a chronicle of cold calculation. Each conquest, each colonial venture, each intervention executed with mathematical precision to optimize power accumulation. This is why studying empire matters, because these systems weren't accidents or natural developments. They were consciously designed extraction mechanisms that reshaped the entire world to benefit a tiny elite. And understanding that history is the first step toward recognizing these same patterns operating today. Remember, in the imperial game, as in all complex systems, results are all that matter, and the scoreboard has always measured the same thing: who controls the resources, who sets the rules, and who benefits from the system. This is your history guide signing off. If you want more unapologetic historical analysis that cuts through the mythology, hit subscribe. Until next time, keep questioning everything they taught you.